Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and I read 113 books this year, so let's talk about them. This is definitely going to be a very lengthy video, so grab a snack, grab a drink, play this while you're doing something. I don't know, it's gonna be a minute that we're here. This is above and beyond. My original goal for this year was 50 books. I hit that in like June and realized that I was definitely beating that. So I bumped it up to 100, and obviously I have exceeded that as well. It comes out to 41,381 pages read according to Goodreads. So I've been doing a lot of reading. Behind me I have all of the books that I read this year that I own physically. This is like half of the books I read. I got really into Libby and audiobooks this year, and so I have a lot of reading that was done on there as well. So yeah, this is about half of them. This feels just crazy. I think last year I read like 80 books. I don't really know what happened this year, but I got a lot of reading done. Maybe it's because I got into audiobooks. So I'm gonna grab my laptop. We're going to go in the order that I finished the books. We'll see if my voice can handle this. I've been filming lots of videos lately, doing all of my wrap-ups and things. So here we go. We're just gonna dive in. There are going to be series that are split up just because I'm going to go in order of how I marked them read on Goodreads. So if I'm looking down a lot, it's because I'm looking at my laptop to figure out what order I went in. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly, but this is just inevitably going to be a very long video. If you would be interested to see, I haven't in the past done videos where I like just talk about my favorites. If you would be interested to see a video like that or like a tier ranking or anything, let me know. This is going to be like a speed run. Here's my rating, here's my thoughts, this is what the book is about type of a video. So if you would like to see something that's a little more like a tier ranking or just a here's my favorites, let me know if that's something that people are interested in. But I'm gonna go ahead and dive in, starting with my first book I finished this year, which actually happened to be one of my favorite books I read this entire year. So I really started on a high note. This is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This is a Goose Girl retelling, and very, very loosely based off of the Goose Girl. It really, like, you kind of have to look for the connections, but it is a dark fantasy retelling. I'm obsessed with it. It is just exactly what I want in a kind of creepy fantasy book. Definitely on the darker side, so be forewarned, this is not a book that is for everyone, but I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. Let me know if you know any books that are similar to this, because I have been chasing the feeling of this book all year. If you would like more in-depth thoughts or descriptions of these videos, I will link my playlist down below of my monthly wrap-ups. I will try to put chapters in this video of what month I read these in, so you can go check my monthly wrap-ups if you would like more in-depth. The only exception to that is December. I haven't done one, so let me know if you would like to see like a full-on December wrap-up. Maybe I'll include that in January's. We'll see. The next book that I finished was actually a reread for me. This is The Search for Wendla by Toni Dieterlisi. This is a middle grade sci-fi series that I just absolutely adore. I've read it before. This is my second or third time reading this book. You're following Eva 9, who is one of the last humans left on Earth. She was raised in a lab, and then she goes on a bunch of adventures on this planet that has been taken over by aliens. I gave this one 5 stars. I love it. I'm obsessed with the series. Will always be a 5-star read for me. Also, the illustrations are amazing. The next one I don't actually own anymore. I've gotten rid of it since I read it, which tells you a little bit about how I felt about that book. This is The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapena. I gave this one 3 stars. This one is a thriller, I guess, about this couple whose baby goes missing and the process that they go through in order to try and find the baby. It was fine. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about this one. It's just okay. It didn't really thrill me. The twist at the end was like fine, but I feel like I saw it coming, and I don't really have more thoughts than that about that book. Next one, and that book and the next 2 were for a books I've been avoiding video. I finished Children of Dune by Frank Herbert. This is book 3 in the Dune series, and I think I'm done after this one. I gave this one 3 stars. It is just weird. The series just gets weirder and weirder as it goes on. This one is following like the next generation down from the main characters that we follow in the first 2 books, it just gets odd. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how to explain it either, but I think I'm done with Dune. I'm gonna call it good there. And then the final book in that video is one that I have been working on for a very, very long time. This is 2-3 Mini Vietnam. It is a collection of essays about wars in Southeast Asia that the US has been involved in. Lots of it is around Vietnam. There's some other things in there as well. It was an interesting read. Definitely a slow book where you just kind of want to read like an essay at a time, but very fascinating. Kind of older feeling. If you're very interested in this time period, I did a whole paper in college about the Pentagon Papers, and so this is something that is kind of fascinating to me, so it was good for that. I don't know that I would recommend it unless you are very interested in the topic. And then I started an audiobook series that I have been working through all year. This is the Penric and Desdemona series by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is Penric's Demon. This is a series of novellas based in her larger fantasy world. I have not read the main books. That's something that I would like to do at some point. But you're following Penric, who accidentally gets himself possessed by a demon, and the wild adventures that ensue from there. Really, really enjoyed the series. The first one's definitely the funniest, I will say that. Solid book, 4 stars. They're like 4 or 5 hour audiobooks typically. We will come across several of these as we go through my reading for the year. Then we have The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. This one is a YA thriller, I guess, about this girl whose mom was a con artist and then she gets trapped in a bank robbery and her skills that come into that. I give it 3 stars. This book really focused a lot more on the teenagers and their angst, and they're just trying to figure their lives out, less so on the like thrillery we're in the middle of a bank robbery thing. That plotline got dragged out really long with a ton of flashbacks, and it just wasn't really my thing. I'd rather have focused on the plot. The next book that I read is the first book in the Ranger's Apprentice series. I've decided to go and reread/continue the series. When I was in middle school, I read like the first 2, and it was so popular at the time that I just could never get my hands on the next books, and so I kind of quit reading the series. So I've decided to go back and try and read it and finish the series, which I haven't been doing a very good job at this year, but on my list to work on it next year. But this is The Ruins of Gorlan, the first book. I gave it a 4 stars. Solid book. I love these fantasy books. The characters are just great. I think reading it as an adult is interesting because there are lots of really fun adult characters as well. So even though it's a middle grade book, I feel like if you read it kind of for the adult characters, it still works. Honestly, the kids are fun too. But if you're like not somebody who regularly reads middle grade, definitely still works as an adult book. And then I read A Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong. This is another contender for favorite book of the year. This is the second duology in the These Violent Delights Secret Shanghai series, following one of the characters from the first book as she kind of does with the fallout of the events in the first book. We are now fully into Civil War, and you have two sets of siblings that are both divided up. So like there's one of each sibling partnership on either side of the Civil War. They're all working as secret agents. So it's kind of like a spy book in Shanghai in the 1930s. It's so fun. There's like a fake marriage thing, and that duo is just so funny. I really, really enjoyed them. 5 stars. Loved this book. Then I started into another series of audiobooks that I read this year, and this is The Raven Boys by, I'm going to mess up her name, Maggie Stayfighter. This is book 1 in the Raven cycle, which I know a lot of people really like. I hadn't actually heard about this one until like 2024, but I decided to go ahead and give it a try. It is about this girl named Blue. She lives in like Virginia, and she meets these boys that she calls the Raven Boys because they go to this fancy like private school, and they are hunting for this dead ancient king that is supposed to grant you a wish if you wake him or something like that. Honestly, plot less of a focus in this book, definitely more of a character-based book, but I did still really enjoy it. The audiobooks are great. I loved the narrator. I gave this book 4 stars. And then another one that I haven't gotten rid of since I read it, this is The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I like the series of Hawthorne and Horowitz by this author, so I thought I'd give another one a try. This one is about a book editor who gets the final manuscript from an author, and then some stuff basically a mystery starts in real life that she starts to try and link together, which sounds really good. The linking between the manuscript and the actual murder that was happening in real life, pretty non-existent. I think it's a stretch to say that that's what the book is about, even though that is very much so how the book is pitched. So I gave this one 3 stars. I was a little bored. I don't plan on continuing the series. And then I read the second book in The Ranger's Apprentice, The Burning Bridge. Another 4-star. Again, really enjoying it. I think that might be the last one that I read this year. I really need to continue this series because I do really enjoy them. They're just such quick, fun reads. Another contender for favorite book of the year, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This one is also a Goose Girl retelling, which just was apparently a theme in some of my favorite books this year. This one follows the Goose Girl fairy tale much more closely. So if you want like a true retelling, this one, Sources Comes to Call, is a little more like loosely based on it. This one is about this girl who was raised by 2 gods in this world. She's currently posing as a princess and things go very wrong. And then you also have this like detective guy who's come in that is trying to basically solve all of these thefts that she has done, and they run into each other and things get a little chaotic. This is just a very silly book. Also, it's just so good. Really hit the nail on the head with this one. I gave it like a 4.5 stars. Solid book. And then I had a couple of continuations of the Raven cycle, the book 2, The Dream Thieves. I gave this one 4 stars. Good continuation of the series. Again, the plot kind of takes a back seat in this whole book series, but the characters are fun. This one has a character that I really don't enjoy in it. He's a little overly crude. Not my favorite, but I did like some of the depth that we got to some of the characters in this book. And then I continued with Blue Lily, Lily Blue. This one I gave 4.5 stars. This was one of my favorite. Also, just narrator nailed this book. There's this like crazy character who sings a lot, and he did a fantastic job at that character. That honestly made the book for me. I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This one is another one that I know people really, really love. It's very lyrical, very descriptive. I feel like this one had been pitched as a winter book. I feel like it's more of a fall book, potentially. You are following this circus that randomly shows up without warning. It's kind of magical, and they're following 2 magicians who have basically been put into a contest when they were children and now are trying to fight this competition that they've been forced into. It's a fun book. I can see why people love it. I gave it 4 stars. It's not exactly my cup of tea. Again, I'm very plot focused. This is very descriptive, which I enjoy. And I like it occasionally. It's not like my all-time favorite book in the world, but I can see why people love it so much. Last Violent Call. This is actually 2 separate little novellas in the Secret Shanghai series that tie in these violent delights to the Foul Lady Fortune world. Loved this. Top reading experience. Enjoyed it so much. 5 stars. You have 2 books. One of them, I don't really want to say who it's about because it kind of spoils things in these violent delights. The first one, you are following 2 people from the first duology as they rescue a girl nearby. And then the second one, the one that I really, really loved, is called This Foul Murder, and it is a train murder mystery with 2 of the characters from the first book. Obsessed with it. I love a train murder mystery. Something about it, just so good. Obsessed with that one. So really enjoyed Last Violent Call. And then I completed the Raven cycle with The Raven King. I gave this one a 4 star. I felt like things got a little dragged out. There were some very anticlimactic endings to some things that we'd been working on all 4 books. And that was the biggest thing that brought this one down for me. But overall, really solid series. Really enjoyed it. Give it a try if you haven't already. Then I read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This is the author of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which I have read. All of her books I feel like are good, but not amazing for me. This one is about this group of kids who goes on a trip in an RV, and then their RV breaks down and then they start getting shot at. There's a sniper outside. I liked the twist. I feel like the ending, and this is how I felt about the end of Good Girl's Guide to Murder series as well. I feel like we just get to the part where I'm starting to get interested in what's going to happen, and then it quickly wraps up and we're done and we don't get to see any of the fallout really. And I wish she would take the time to explore what happens after the big twist a little bit more. I feel like we hit the big twist and then it ends. I would like to see a little bit more of the fallout after the fact. And that's kind of been a consistent complaint amongst her books for me, which on one hand is a good thing because it means I'm connected to the characters and I want to see how things go for them in the end. On the other hand, it just leaves me feeling like I needed a little something else in the book. I don't know that I plan on reading any more Holly Jackson books. None of them have quite delivered what I was hoping they would. So yeah, 4 stars. Next, I read City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is book 2 in the Mortal Instruments series in the Shadowhunters universe. I've been working my way through trying to start the Shadowhunters. This one's fine. I don't honestly really remember about it. I gave it a 3.75. Things drag on. There's some interesting stuff. I think my favorite character so far is Simon. We just get a lot of weird drama. I don't love the plot line that goes on in this book. It's fine. Continuing another series, I read Black Powder War by Naomi Novik. This is book 3 in the Temeraire series, which is a series of books about the Napoleonic Wars if there were dragons. It's like a historical fiction fantasy book. This one was good. I feel like the second book kind of took us away from a lot of the characters that I really loved. This one started to bring us back in. We got a little bit more of some of the side characters that I'd grown to really enjoy. Honestly, they're kind of on their own for the first little bit of the book, but by the end of the book, we're back with side characters that I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping that the 4th book will continue with like the little crew of people that we really love. These are not the fastest paced books in the world, but I really enjoy them. I gave this one 4 stars. And then I had an audiobook that I listened to continue a series. This is Ghosts of Greenglass House by Kate Milford. This is the second book in the Greenglass House series. I gave this one a 4 star. These are fun little like middle grade mystery books about this kid who lives with his parents and they run a smuggler's inn. And the first 2 books are both about Christmas time. They get snowed in with a group of interesting people and they have to solve some kind of mystery. They're really fun books. I quite enjoy them. They're just quick, light reads. I need your opinions. Should I continue the series? Because the rest of the series doesn't seem to follow this main cast of characters, and I'm not so sure about that. So let me know if you've read the rest of the series, if it's worth continuing, or if it's like starting a whole new series, because it's a whole new set of characters, it seems like. Hey guys, I'm popping in really quick as I am editing this video because I realized I completely skipped a book. I don't really know how that happened because this is one of my favorite books of the year, but that is Four Dead Queens by Astrid Schuldt. This is the first book I read by this author. You'll notice later in the video I read a couple other of her books this year as well. I really enjoyed them. This is a like a sci-fi mixed with a mystery book. You're in this world where there's 4 kingdoms and each kingdom kind of has a specialty, and you're following this girl who is involved with some like thieving rings, and then you have 4 queens, 1 for each of the quadrants, and she basically comes across some intel that the queens have been killed and nobody in the public knows, and so she goes to try and go on this thing. She ends up mixed up with this messenger trying to figure out what to do with this information that she has received, and it gets really twisty. I thought the mystery part was actually done very well. The sci-fi world maybe less developed than the mystery plot, but I thought it was still very good. The twist got me. It was surprising. I loved the ending. I liked these characters. I would definitely read more in this world. Overall, just a really, really solid book. I can't believe I missed it when I originally filmed this video, but I'm inserting it now and we'll go back to my long-winded video of all my other books. Then we started into another one of my Around the World in Books videos. I will link that playlist down below as well. Starting with The Palace Walk. This is by, oh shoot, can I remember how to pronounce people's names? Naguib Mahfouz. This is book 1 in a trilogy, technically, called the Cairo Trilogy or something like that? Could be wrong. But you're following this family in Egypt. I believe they're actually in Cairo. And you're just kind of following their lives in a very different time period. Women aren't really encouraged to go and do things, and you're watching this dad kind of struggle with, there's honestly, it's kind of a shifting point where things are starting to modernize a bit, and you're watching this dad and mom, who are very traditionalist, watch their kids kind of go for some more modern stuff. Not like super modern, but you're kind of watching that. There's some civil unrest that is happening. At the end of the book, you kind of start into a bit of a war. Cairo gets occupied. They might be occupied the whole book, but things really come to a head towards the end of the book. It was fine. I don't necessarily plan on continuing the series. If you have read the rest of the trilogy, let me know if you think it's good. I gave this one 3 stars. Just another one of those not my favorite because there's not really a plot books. And you kind of jump back and forth between following different family members, and I just really felt just gross reading some of the characters, which I know is kind of the point. It very much so is a snapshot into the time period, but some of the men characters just, it was a bit much for me, and I was just struggling to read in their point of views. Very objectifying of women in like a gross way. So not the biggest fan of that part of it. Probably accurate to how men actually felt at that time, or thought at that time, but not enjoyable to read. And then I took a little bit of a break quickly from that video to read Painted Devils because I got it in from Libby. This is the second book in the Little Thieves series. Loved it. 5 stars. Definitely you could potentially stop at the first book. The first one kind of wraps up in a way that you could just leave it there. I personally am glad I continued the trilogy. It does take a little bit of a change. There's a bit more of a serious tone through some of the other books, and the second one specifically deals with a lot of trauma, a lot of things about somebody who has been previously sexually assaulted and how she's dealing with that now that she's kind of in a relationship-ish. Still really enjoyed it. I thought it was handled well. Painted Devils. And then I continued with my Around the World in Books video with The Other Americans by Leila Lalami. This one I gave 3.5 stars. It's fine. You're following this family who, I believe their dad is who gets killed in a like hit and run. And kind of as they deal with that and all of the secrets that come out, really that plot line kind of takes a back seat and you're just following the family. You get lots of flashbacks. Again, it was good. There was one character I didn't really love in it that kind of brought the whole thing down for me. A little bit slow. The last if I can grab it. The last book in that video was People Like Them by Samira Sadira. This one is a thriller set in a French alpine village where a family is very brutally murdered. And it's one of those books where you start with the Inquisition, and so you know pretty much exactly what happened and who did it, and you're just kind of trying to figure out why, which is not always my favorite. I gave this one 3 stars. Sometimes I like that kind of a style, but this one I felt just like, I don't know, the guy was just kind of crazy. Like, I just don't feel like it was interesting enough to warrant an entire book explaining why. I would have rather, I don't know, something a little different. And then I read another middle grade book through Libby. This is Theodosia and the Staff of Osiris. This is the second book in the Theodosia Throckmorton series. That was all a mouthful. This is a middle grade mystery fantasy series. This book is about a girl whose parents run are curators for a Egyptian museum in London, and she can see or sense magic. And so she has taken it upon herself as like this 11-year-old girl to rid all of the artifacts they bring in of their curses before they get put in the museum. And it gets her into this whole crazy thing. There's this like secret organization she gets involved in. There's this fun little street rat character who is the greatest. Really enjoy these books. I think I read this entire thing on a plane, actually. Great series. I need to finish it this year. My next book, we actually went to Spain in the spring, and I wanted to read a book by a Spanish author while I was there, and so I picked up this bind up of 2 short stories. This is Lazarillo de Tormes and The Swindler. It is described as 2 Spanish picturesque novels. Novels is a bit of stretch. They're like short stories. Both of these follow basically a troublemaker little boy as he gets up to all sorts of chaos. They're fine. It's nothing overly special. They're kind of akin to like a Huckleberry Finn, Adventures of Tom Sawyer type of a book, just set in Spain. So they're fun, a good time, quick reads, but nothing overly special in my opinion. I gave it a 3.75. And then I read a much anticipated final book to the series, Foul Heart Huntsman, the final book in the Secret Shanghai series. This one really brings everything together from both duologies. I am a firm believer that you need to read these Violent Delights duology before you read this duology. I feel like it is very helpful to know who all the people are that start showing up in this book because they do not get introduced. They're just all of a sudden there. And I think you need the background. We're following the events that happened in Foul Lady Fortune. I didn't love this one quite as much as Foul Lady Fortune. It takes a bit, some stuff happens at the end of that first book that sets this plot up, and it's a lot heavier. It's not quite as just like fun and silly. One of the main characters that I really loved in Foul Lady Fortune has some things happen to him at the end of the first book that make him less of a fun character, and we don't really get him back to himself until pretty far into this book. Satisfying ending. I liked how it wrapped up. Highly recommend Secret Shanghai. I will probably go and reread the whole series at some point. Maybe not this year, but potentially 2027. Could be a good year to go reread those. And then I read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is a standalone book. It is part of the Cosmere. And I will say, I think it is helpful to a certain extent to have some background on Cosmere before going into this book. Technically, you could read it as a standalone, and I've seen lots of people recommend this as a place to start with Brandon Sanderson. I personally feel like it helped to have seen Wit before. I had only read The Way of Kings with Wit in it first, and I felt like that was enough, but I don't know if I feel like this humor would have come off as well as it did for me if I didn't already kind of know the character of Wit. But this is like a cozy fantasy. You're following this girl who lives on this island, and basically the guy she's in love with gets sent away. He disappears, and so she decides she's gonna go find him, and she goes on this whole quest. It's really fun. Good time. I will say I saw the like plot twist coming from a mile away. If you really just pay attention, you kind of can catch it. Maybe you're supposed to. I don't know. I really thought there was just some really good funny things in there. Brandon Sanderson kind of nails it with his sense of humor. Really good standalone if you want a Brandon Sanderson. And I gave that one 4.5 stars. I don't know if I said that. And this book's a little random, but I read The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. I gave this one 3 stars. The context behind this, I work at a high school. We had a couple of TAs that were in our office at the time that I read this book, and they had been assigned it as part of a college English literature class that they were taking dual credit at the high school. They were having this whole debate about something with the ending of this book, and me and the other person in my office were listening to them debate this for a couple days, and we're like, okay, I feel like we need to know, we need to be able to participate in this conversation. And so they happened to be finished reading their copies of it before they needed to for the class. So they had like a few days before they needed to turn them back in. And so they loaned us their books. We read them. And then we had this little book club with like me and the other person in my office and our 2 TAs about The Grace Year. This is a dystopian book, I guess would be the best way to put it, about this community that is kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And in this village, when you turn 16, you get sent out into the woods for your grace year to basically purge the magic from your system in a really weird, creepy way. There's stuff that goes down in the woods. Nobody talks about the grace year. It's this whole thing. Obviously, there is a lot of like social commentary. They're studying it in an English class. It feels a little bit like potentially a cleaner, safer version of like The Handmaid's Tale. I think there's a lot of similar topics that it is discussing. I haven't actually read Handmaid's Tale, but from my understanding of what Handmaid's Tale is, I feel like this covers a lot of same topics, but maybe then a little bit you're safer to bring it into a high school way. It was good. It was interesting. Some of it felt a little tropey. I felt like there was a little bit of an odd romance thing. I would be interested to read The Handmaid's Tale and see how similar they are, because this feels like maybe just like the YA version of The Handmaid's Tale. And then I read The Witch Doctor's Daughter by Katrina Modowd. This author I actually originally read for Around the World in Books videos. This is not the one that I read for that video, but this is about, it's kind of like a coming of age. You're following this young woman who is just trying to figure out her life. She leaves her house in the water village to go live in the jungle with some of her extended family. How much is on the back? She meets this linguist guy. He's fun. Finds herself caring for a newborn that has been orphaned, and just generally is trying to figure out what on earth she wants to do with her life. It was a very good book. I'm not usually the biggest on just like general women's fiction type of books, but I really love this one. Katrina Modowd writes in a way that just makes me visualize things more than any other author. I'm not a huge visualizer when I read, but I can just like see the scenes in her books. I love her writing. They're all set in Brunei. I'm not really sure how to say it still. 4 stars. Honestly, the more I think about it, this could go up to like a 4.5 star. I actually really enjoyed this book, and you can just get so connected to the characters. It's not very long, but I do feel like you get really tied into these characters. All right, I really need to be going faster. Let me get to the next page. This is gonna be such a long video. Next book that I read, another one that is a contender for a favorite book of the year. This is Where the Dark Stands Still. I originally gave it 4.5 stars. I think it's a 5-star book. I just loved it. This is by A.B. Pornick. It is a book based off of Polish folklore, I believe. This girl goes into the woods to try and find this flower to get rid of her magic powers and ends up running into like the devil of the woods, and he agrees to help her get rid of her powers if she works for him for a year. Things go crazy. It's a little bit of a dark, kind of along the same lines of Sorceress Comes to Call as far as like vibes. Obsessed with it. So good. I need to read the book that this author came out with this year, or like more recently, something about like Swan Lake. Not really sure what it's called off the top of my head, but loved this book. I need to get a copy of it. Obsessed with it. We'll definitely reread it at some point. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, a classic. This is a bind up of both of them. Very fascinating to read it and compare like really what lots of the movies and things have done. It has combined things from both books into like one plot. Not the biggest magical realism person, but it was fine. I'm glad to read it once. Maybe I'll read it again with like a kid, but I don't think I'll be picking this one up again soon. Probably like a 3-star. Then I read The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is a horror book based off of a short story called The Willows, which we'll talk about in a minute. Set in North Carolina, this woman gets divorced, ends up moving into the back room in her uncle's curiosity and taxidermy museum, and a hole gets broken into the wall. They find this whole other land. Things get creepy. I'll be honest, this one didn't feel as spooky as I was hoping it would. I felt like it just never really felt suspenseful or scary to me for being like a horror book. T. Kingfisher's horror books are not my favorite of her books. I definitely like her fantasy better. Still fine, but I gave it like a 3.75. It was good. I wanted it to be great. And then I'll talk about the next book, 2 books together, because I did finish the Wendla trilogy. This is The Battle for Wendla and A Hero for Wendla, both by Tony DiTerlizzi. We've already talked about the series. It's just such a good series. Please read it. I don't think I need to say more about that. Another big surprise for me this year was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I didn't expect to love this one. I thought it'd be fine. I'm not the biggest cozy fantasy or romantasy person, but I was pleasantly surprised. This one sets up like a horror book. Like genuinely, you could have written this into a horror book. I don't know if I 100% agree with this being cozy fantasy. There are some real high stakes in this book. I feel like people pitched this book wrong, and it was actually far more enjoyable than I thought just because it didn't really match what people pitched. I went into it thinking it was going to be a cozy fantasy romantasy book. It's not really. Like it is, but there's some pretty high stakes. The fairies in this book are not messing around. They do some pretty crazy stuff. People are getting like hollowed out, kidnapped. It's like a whole thing. So there's definitely more going on plot-wise than I expected there to be in this book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I need to read the next one. I gave it 4.5 stars. And then I read the much-anticipated conclusion to the Little Thieves series. This is Holy Terrors. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I will say, first book, still my favorite. I've heard a lot of people's complaints about this one getting really confusing, and I will agree that there is some plot lines that kind of come out of left field, and there are a lot of new characters that get thrown into this book. I did not read the novellas that are in between the second and third book. I don't know. I've heard people say that you need to. I don't know that I agree that you need to. Maybe they change your reading experience, but I felt like it was fine jumping into the third book. Overall, love the trilogy, would recommend. I won't spend a ton of time on this one, but I did read White Sand. This is a graphic novel by Brandon Sanderson in the Cosmere. It was fine. I feel like this plot was a little too complicated to lend itself well to the graphic novel format. This was like my first graphic novel I've ever read. I don't know that it was the best place to start. I gave it 3.5 stars. I'm excited to see what the novel version of that book is like. Then I read The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. This is a short story that the Hollow Places T. Kingfisher book is based off of, which I didn't know going into it, but it's in like the author's note at the end of the book. So I decided to pick it up. I got it from like Project Gutenberg, just got the PDF online. I gave this one 4 stars. Actually really enjoyed this one. I think I like this better than the T. Kingfisher. It definitely did a better job of building up the like spooky creepiness, like the suspense, which it's a very short book. So very impressive that they were able to do that. I would say that The Hollow Places almost feels like a sequel to this book, and I think it would have been more enjoyable had I read The Willows first. So that is my recommendation to you. Go read The Willows. It's like a super, 30, 60 pages short story. Read that and then go read The Hollow Places. I think you would find it much more interesting. And then I did another reread of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This one is so good. I love it. I reread it specifically because I had this illustrated edition. It's so beautiful. I love the pictures in this. I don't need to say too much more about this. It's The Hobbit. You all know it, I'm sure. If you haven't read it, please do. And then I dived into another Around the World in Books video, starting with The General of the Dead Army by Ismail Kadare. This one is set in Albania. You are following an Italian general who goes after World War II to reclaim the bodies of their fallen soldiers. And so he gets sent on, I can't remember what the word is, but this mission to go and find the bodies of people that they know that died and were buried there and bring them back so they can be buried in Italy. This one was very fascinating. I feel like nobody really writes books about the after effects of wars. Like, it's 20 years after the war. He's just finding bones. A lot of it is about how inaccurate the record keeping is about where these bodies are ending up. Very interesting book. I gave it 3.5 stars. And then I read The Judgment of Richard Richter by Igor Stix. Really good writing. There's some good quotes. I actually started annotating for like the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book got less good. So I really enjoyed the first half. Second half, not so much. There's some weird plot lines that get into it. You're following this guy who's basically having a midlife crisis, goes into this war-torn city, makes some friends, falls in love. Some weird things happen with that. Don't love that plot line, but there's some really good quotes at the first half of the book. And I give that one 4 stars. Took a break from that video to read what I actually read through Libby originally because my hold came through. All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Herman. This one is exactly what it sounds like. You're following a book about all of these villains who get pulled into this tournament to see who basically gets to be the supervillain. The plotline that I love the most about this book is that it's modern day and you have somebody who wrote this whistleblowing book, so the press are all on it, so they're having to deal with paparazzi while they're in the middle of this tournament to the death. Very fascinating. Thought it was great. I gave this one 4 stars. I'm going to try and really pick up the pace on these. So if I'm going fast, it's because this video is already way too long. League of Liars by Astrid Schultz, a new favorite author for me. This one I gave 4.5 stars. It is a legal thriller meets YA fantasy. Really enjoyable. The world is very interesting. The magic is very interesting. Would recommend. The Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka. Did not enjoy this one. Not a Kafka person, I learned. Gave it 2 stars. I don't need to say more about that one. This one is a chunky one. I read The Grey House by Mariam Petrosyan. This book was a lot to get through, but I really enjoyed it. It's one of those books that while you're reading it, you're like, do I like this or not? But in hindsight, I really enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. It's about these kids who live in this orphanage specifically for children with disabilities, and they basically create their own little microculture. There's some weird magical realism stuff that gets a little confusing, but the characters are just so fun. And then I had several books that I don't actually own physically that I read via Libby. First one was The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is a heist book set in Paris. There's these magical families. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked the crew. The plot was fine. I will continue the series at some point, but it hasn't been one that's made the top of my list. And then I read The Grimoire Grammar School Parent-Teacher Association by Caitlin Rozowskis. This I gave a 3.5 stars. It is about this mom who her kindergartner just recently got bitten and turned into a werewolf, and she's all of a sudden learning about this whole world of magical creatures and having to switch schools and try and get involved. Expected it to be a little funnier than it was. It's a little bit more about this mom being ultra traumatized as she tries to adjust to her new lifestyle. If you go into it with that frame of mind, you might enjoy it more. I went into it thinking I was getting a funny book. It's not what I got. And then I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This is like a YA romantasy book. I gave it 4 stars. I was really there for the murder mystery. It's about this girl who can see death. Her parents died when she was a baby. She's getting passed around. She makes it to her last chance to live with family, essentially, and has to solve a murder. It was good. I'm not a romantasy person still. Could have done without the romance. And then, getting into some books that my husband chose for me for a video. Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. This was my first time reading this book. I know it's kind of crazy that I never read this as a kid. Working my way through this series slowly. Well, I've only read the first one so far. I need to continue the series. It was good. 3.75. It's a great middle grade book. There's a reason everybody read it. Okay, my camera kind of cut me off there. Hopefully that works fine. The next book is another one that really surprised me. This one I listened to as an audiobook with my husband. This is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I gave this one 4.75 stars. It is just a delightful book. It had me laughing. The narrator, great job. Would highly recommend the audiobook. It's about this girl who gets invited by this author to this island to do this competition to get rights for his latest book in his series, and this kid that she's trying to adopt It's a whole thing. It's so cute. Would highly recommend if you just want like a cute, make you feel good book with some really funny moments in it. Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This one has been getting all the hype on the internet. I don't get it. I'll be honest, my husband really loves the series. I was underwhelmed. It's fine. I give it 4 stars. I'm not obsessed with it like a lot of people are. I don't get why everybody is hyping it up so much. I need to continue the series and see if it's one of those things where I just need some time with the characters. I didn't love the main character. He's okay. Need to spend some more time with that series potentially. Then I listened to the second book in the Penric and Desdemona series, Penric and the Shaman. I gave this one 4 stars. They're just solid books. Again, I think the first one was the funniest, but I did really enjoy the rest of them as well. He gets into all sorts of different shenanigans. I liked the other types of magic you're exploring in this book. It was a good one. Then I read The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This one feels like you are reading a original fairy tale, which is good. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite book ever. This one's another 4 stars. Great, but a little confusing. A little hard to follow, but it was a good book. Then I read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is a YA fantasy based off of the King Arthur legend. Another one that was good, but not my favorite. I felt like it was maybe a little tropey and predictable. 4.25 stars. I will continue the series, but it's not like my all-time favorite series so far. I'm a little over the 2 main characters. I've been struggling with not liking the main characters in YA books a lot lately, but I do like some of the side characters. And then I listened to The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was a good kind of spooky, can't quite tell if it's sci-fi or fantasy. It feels like maybe fantasy, but it's also could be totally explained as a sci-fi. They go to the school. You're following this girl who, she has a cochlear implant and she can hear things that maybe other people can't. There's some weird things about like demons and jumping into other worlds and secret societies at the school and stuff like that. I liked that part. The romance brought it down a bit for me. I felt like it was a little odd, but enjoyable book. I want to read some more books by this author. Then I did Penric's Mission in that Penric and Desdemona series. 4.5 stars. This is one of my favorite ones. The reading order gets a little confusing when you get to this point in the series. I'm trying to remember. I think you do 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 6 or something like that. Like it gets a little out of order as far as the timeline. Do your research. Another book for an Around the World in Books video, Land of Two Seas by Chandan Sen-Gupta. This one is like sort of a mystery book. I think it's pitched as like a thriller. It wasn't very thrilling, but the mystery was interesting. Definitely learned about some things in history and a culture that I didn't know about beforehand. It is set in Bahrain. It was good. I don't have a lot to say about it. I give it 3.5 stars. If you want more in-depth thoughts, you can check out my Around the World in Books videos. I definitely think you can tell this was self-published. There was some errors in there, but overall, good book. Then I did Mira's Last Dance, again, Penric and Desdemona, 4 stars. Maybe not my favorite of the series, but it was good. I don't want to spend a million years talking about all my Penric books, but I'm going to talk about them briefly. You can check my wrap-ups for more in-depth thoughts. Ali and Nino, another one for Around the World in Books. This is by Kurban Saeed, which is an author who nobody really knows who it is. This is like a romance book. They call it an adventure too. It was a little adventure-y, mostly a romance. 3 stars. I'm not the biggest romance fan, if you haven't figured that out by now. Open Skies by Niloufar Rahmani. This one is a nonfiction, like memoir book about Afghanistan's first female pilot, or like she was like a fighter pilot. So interesting. Would highly recommend. 5 stars. If you're looking for a good memoir, definitely add this to your list. 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. This one I gave 3.5 stars. It is about this guy who owns a bookshop, and there start to be some murders that seem to follow along with a list that he wrote on a blog of 8 books that have perfect murders in them. And so the FBI gets him involved in it. I will say my biggest thing about this book is spoils the endings of so many classic mystery books. So just be aware that you will have quite a few books spoiled for you. It might be worth trying to find a list of all the books that are included in this because you will have a lot of them spoiled. It was fine. not my favorite mystery, but like it did the job. Roundabout of Death by Faisal Kartash. This one is set in Aleppo. You're following this guy who is a teacher as he deals with like the war-torn city, and really it's examining how people adjust their lives to living under like constant threat of bombs and war. It was interesting. Didn't really hold my attention well. It was a little hard to follow. I gave it 2 stars. Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. This is book 2 in the Renegades series. I read the first one forever ago. I don't even remember. This is like a YA sci-fi superhero book. It was fine. Book 2 was good. I gave it 4 stars. It's definitely not my favorite series ever, but it was fine. And then I listened to I'm Afraid You Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle, another one by this author. This one was fun, and that's probably the best way to explain it. You're following a dragon exterminator who absolutely hates his job. My favorite part of this book was the commentary on traditional characters' roles in fantasy books, and honestly I liked that about The Last Unicorn as well. I feel like he does a lot about looking at character archetypes and subverting those or making someone follow their character. I gave I'm Afraid You Got Dragons 4 stars. Penric's Fox, another one of those books, coming in at 3.5 stars, potentially my least favorite. But it was fine. They're still good. Like, all of them are good. That one just, like, if we're ranking them, one of my less favorite ones. And then got through a big hulking book. This is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, book 2 in the Stormlight Archive. I'm not even going to attempt to explain what this book is about. I will say this one lost my interest. I was struggling a bit. Most of my favorite characters, I really don't love the main characters. Most of my favorite characters are side characters, and a lot of them just completely disappeared from this book. Some of them died. I was unhappy about where we chose to focus our time in this book. I have high hopes for the next one. That potentially some of those characters that didn't get as big of a role in this one might get a bit more page time in book 3. I'm hopeful. I gave that one 3.75 stars. It was good. Not obsessed. Okay, I took a little bit of a break for lunch. So if the lighting or anything looks different, that's why. But I am ready to talk about the rest of these books. Let me see, where was I? I think I just finished talking about Words of Radiance. So, All of Our Demise by Amanda Foody, and what was the other author's name on that? I don't know why it doesn't say on Goodreads. Second book 2, All of Us Villains. This one I gave a 4 stars to. It was good. I feel like it continued the story well. It like is very much so one cohesive story. It's not like there's a plot line and then a plot line. They're like one story. Thought the ending was good. I like the characters. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was just a good second book. And then I read Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is a 3rd book in Renegades. I gave it a 3.5 stars. Definitely the series went downhill as it went for my enjoyment of the books. I don't love how the series ended. It's very, I don't know, I feel like the whole book they went through a lot of different challenges, and then how it ended kind of just erased everything that had just happened, and it felt so anticlimactic. It also very much so, I can see why some people say that they think she's going to continue writing in this world at some point. The epilogue definitely makes it seem like she's teeing something up. I don't know that I'm interested or that I care to read anything else in this world at this point, so I think I'm done with Renegades. Just looked behind me and realized I do have All of Our Demise. Forgot I actually have a physical of that. The other author is Christine Lynn Herman. Then the next book that I read was Shadows of Truth. This is by Astrid Schuldt. This is the sequel to League of Liars, that like legal thriller one. This one, it doesn't really continue with the whole legal thriller thing. This becomes much more of a traditional YA book, and I didn't love that about it. I liked the first book better for sure. I think the plot was interesting, but it definitely feels a little bit more just kind of like any other YA fantasy. What I love is her interesting mixes of genres. That's what I love from Astrid Schuldt. The other book that I love by her is Four Dead Queens. So not the biggest fan of where it went, but it was still a good book. Like I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time. And then we have another Penric book. Like I said, quite a few of these in my year of reading. This one is Penric, or is The Prisoner of Limnos. This one, he ends up on a ship captured with some twins. There's like a whole pirate plot to it. This was one of the weird ones of we're kind of going out of order. I don't know. I gave it a 3-star. It was fine. Definitely, I feel like I had a little bit of a slump where I was like, oh, I'm not enjoying them so much, which I can't remember if this was the last one I read this year. I think I read at least one more. I kind of quit listening to them for a minute because I was like, okay, maybe I just need to take a break. I've listened to too many too fast and I need to save some of it. So I will be revisiting this series again in 2026, but at some point I did decide that I needed to pause on these. And then I read a really big one. This is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is the first book I've ever read by this author. I know one of her biggest ones is Piranesi. I don't know that I have any interest in reading that one, to be completely honest. Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, you're following, basically magic has disappeared from England, and then 2 magicians pop up, and they kind of are friends, kind of are enemies, as they try to bring magic back. It is a very long-winded book, for sure. Again, I'm not sure that I'm into this like super descriptive, just for the vibes type of book. I gave it 3 stars. I liked parts of it, and then there were parts of it that totally just like bogged me down and I had such a hard time getting through. So mixed feelings, depends on the part of the book. Then we have a book from one of my all-time favorite authors. This is Stuart Turton's The Last Murder at the End of the World. This one is a sci-fi mystery book. He does mystery books mixed with other genres. Most of the other ones are fantasy. This one is sci-fi. Following this island, basically everybody on the world has been killed by this mysterious fog except for the people on this tiny little island. When one of the researchers on the island gets murdered, and that takes down the system that is protecting them from the fog, and so they have a timeline with which they need to solve this murder or they all die. There's some fun twists. I did not see the solution coming from where of what it did, so that's always fun when you don't guess the ending of a mystery book. 5 stars. I love Stuart Turton. I am almost completely done with his backlist. This was the last full novel of his that I have to read, and then now I'm down to just a couple short stories that he has in some collections, so we'll be reading those at some point. I need Stuart Turton to write another book. And then another highly anticipated read for me, this is Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. This is a Snow White retelling. I loved this book. This one's definitely one of her kind of more on the like funny, lighthearted end of things. It says that it's a dark reimagining. I don't know that I feel like it was darker than the original book. Like, how do you go darker than that? But it has some dark elements, but overall it is definitely much more of a lighthearted, funny tone. You're following this poison master who gets recruited by the king because he thinks his daughter Snow is getting poisoned and she is trying to save Snow. There was a little subplot of romance. That duo is just so funny to me. Definitely kind of like a awkward middle-aged people flirting vibe. T. Kingfisher seems to do frequently, but really good one. I gave it a 5 stars. Would recommend. I also think that this would be a great option if you were trying to get into T. Kingfisher as a like first book. Then I listened to A Night in the Lonesome October by Roger Zelazny. I don't really know how to say that. This one is a really silly book about a whole bunch of different classic Halloween characters who have come together, and there's this competition that they're all part of, and it happens on Halloween night, and you're following the lead up. So you have like Jack the Ripper and Count Dracula and Frankenstein and his monster and a bunch of other characters that I didn't even really know, but are apparently also classic Halloween characters. But the catch is it's all narrated by the animals. Specifically, your main narrator is Jack the Ripper's dog. And it's just like a silly book. I will say plot was lacking. I was very confused for a lot of this book on what exactly was going on. But it was a fun, good time. Would recommend for October. I read it a little bit earlier than that, just because that's when my hold came through from the library. But it was fun. Would recommend. I gave it a 3.75. Not gonna be like mind-blowing, but it was good. And then I read Akarni by Lynette Noni. This is the first book in the Medoran Chronicles. I really loved this book. I got the recommendation from Rachel Catherine. I've seen her rave about it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It is like a magical school type book that is just so fun, and that is the best way to describe it in my opinion. It's just, they feel like kids. It's just everything that I wish YA fantasy still was. Without any of the tropes, you never really know what's going on. It's just so good. And I feel like we've this is what I've been missing in YA fantasy in a lot of the recent releases. So go read the Madoran Chronicles. On the flip side of that, A Study in Drowning was exactly what I feel like I've been being annoyed about in a lot of YA fantasies lately. This started well. The setup was good, and then it 100% got sidetracked by the romance, and I lost interest completely in it. This one has gotten very popular. I gave it a 3.5. The plot is hard to explain, so I'm not even going to try in this short amount of time, but it was fine. I will not be continuing the series. And then what I think might have been my last Penric book, The Orphans of Raspe. This one I gave a 4-star, definitely higher. Actually, I think that this is the one. Okay, I got some mixed up. This is the one where he rescues the orphans from pirates, and it was more fun. The Prisoner of Lemnos is a different book, where he gets, somebody gets taken prisoner and they do like a jailbreak, which sounds more fun. It wasn't really. Orphans of Raspe, that's the twins pirate one. That one was more fun. Getting things mixed up. I read too many of these this year, but I think maybe I read one more after this. I don't really remember. We'll see. They're all good. Just go read Penric. And then I read The Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I gave this one 4 stars. This one was another fun, kind of like spookier, creepier fantasy book. It definitely followed a few tropes that I wasn't the biggest fan of. My favorite part is the sentient house, for sure. Love the house. Loved specifically the sibling-like relationship between the house and the main guy. That was really fun. The romance could have done without, as usual. 4 stars. And then back into another Around the World in Books video, starting with In the Time of Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. This one is kind of a heavy book about these sisters who were part of the revolution in the Dominican Republic. You know from the get-go that several of the sisters die. And you are following up the events that led to their death. Definitely makes it a heavier book, especially because there are parts of this book where you are rooting for the characters and you're like so attached to them, and then all of a sudden you just remember that in your back of your head you know that most of them die. Definitely a heavy book, very well written. In the Time of Butterflies, I give it 4 stars. Then I read Black and White Sands by Elma Napier. This is a memoir about a woman who moved from London to Dominica. I gave it 3 stars. It's alright as far as a memoir goes. Not the most engaging memoir I've ever read. Definitely one of those things where I was like, who is this person and why am I reading a memoir for like half of it? By the second half of the book, you start to discover like why we have a book about her. She's got pretty involved in politics and things like that. But for a lot of the book, I was sitting there like, why do I need a book about some random person who moved to the Caribbean? So that's how I felt about that one. A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. I gave this one 3 stars. This one is also memoir-ish. It's like nonfiction. She has such a chip on her shoulder, and I feel like that comes off very much so in her writing about tourists and what they have done to her island. And that was the thing that was the biggest drawback for it. It was fine. Nothing to write home about. Then I read The Unmaking of June Farrow, another one that pleasantly surprised me. This one is sort of like a women's fiction romance with titch of fantasy or sci-fi in it, about this family of women who have kind of gone crazy, and your main character June Farrow starts to see the things, and so she's like, oh well, it's my time, I'm going crazy, and then you learn that it's maybe a little more complicated than that. I gave it 4.5 stars. I was surprised how connected to these characters I felt and how much I got into the story. Again, I wasn't really sure about it. It's pretty heavy on the romance, which surprised me that I was actually okay with how it went. There's a little bit of a love triangle that I'm not sure I love how it was dealt with, but I feel okay about it. That's The Unmaking of June Farrow. The Girl with the Hazel Eyes, gave it a 3.5 star. This is by Callie Browning. It is about 2 authors, one who is writing a memoir about the other one who is still alive and telling her all the things to write in the memoir. Pitched as a bit of a mystery, saw it coming a mile away. It was fine. I don't really have much to say about that one. It was good, not great. And then a very anticipated release for me. This is The Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown. This is number 6 in the Robert Langdon series, which hasn't got a new installment in quite some time, so this was very fun. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was exactly what I wanted in a Robert Langdon book. We got a recurring main character, which was fun. That's never happened in the series before. This one was also definitely missing on the like religious organization aspect, which was interesting because I feel like most of the other ones have a religious organization or some major religious tie-in. This one didn't so much. It was a surprisingly fitting book for October because it starts with a golem in the streets of Prague and you kind of go from there. Very fun. Loved the setting. Books in Prague are great. And then I read, I think, my only Agatha Christie for the year, if I can grab it. This is A Mystery of the Blue Train, my latest read in the Poirot series. Like I said before, I love a train mystery. This one was a good one. I gave it 4.25. Go read an Agatha Christie. And then we start into my major spooky reads. I have a whole reading vlog of these, so I'll try to go fast. I'm trying to speed up. The Halloween Tree, Ray Bradbury. Gave this 3 stars. It's like a kid's Halloween book. It was fine. Maybe not as an audiobook. It was a little confusing. The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. Short story. Very, very short story. I would have loved more. I definitely need to read T. Kingfisher's retelling of this because I feel like this story warrants a longer plot. 3 stars. Dreadful by Caitlin Rosaskis. Still don't know how to say her name. Gave this one 4 stars. This one was a little bit more what I was expecting from Grimoire Grammar School. It was a bit funnier. You're following this guy who wakes up with no memory and realizes that he is the Dark Lord of a castle involved in some kind of plot that involves a princess locked up in his dungeon, and he has no idea what's going on. Pretty good. Would recommend. The Devil Aspect. This is probably the darkest, goriest book I've maybe ever read. Very good though. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. This is by Craig Russell. Set in an insane asylum in Prague. Well, outskirts of Prague. Surrounding area. You're following several serial killers. The most recent one, a detective trying to solve who the latest serial killer is. It gets dark. It's gory. Probably every trigger warning you could possibly imagine is in this book. You've been warned. The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This one is a middle grade fantasy book about a kid who gets raised by ghosts in a graveyard. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know how I feel about the ending. I feel like it didn't really make sense with the character arc, but other than that, I really enjoyed the book. Garlic and the Vampire by Brie Paulson. This is a story that I think lends itself well to a graphic novel. Love the art style. This was cute. We'll probably pick up the second one next October. The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, 3.5 stars. Very similar thoughts to how I felt about the Hollow Places. Is that what that one's called? Didn't really have the spook factor for me. Was waiting for it to be scarier and never really got there. The dog was fun. The neighbors are fun. Not so sure that the horror really translated for me. Legend of Sleepy Hollow by I keep saying these things wrong. By Washington Irving. Interesting to read the original, for sure. Would recommend doing that at least once in your life. Underwhelmed is probably the best word to use for this one. Thought it could have been longer. Also, I don't know why people just explain this as spooky. It's not really that spooky. Six of Crows. I have a whole video just reading this duology, so I won't spend too much time here. This is by Leigh Bardugo. It is the second installment in the Grishaverse. 4.5 stars. I thought it was good. It's a heist book. I like the crew. I thought there were some interesting things that happened on the heist. I got a little annoyed with some of the romantic character drama things, but other than that, solid book. Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I gave this one a 2.75. Highly underwhelmed by this thriller. Not thrilling. Didn't really care about the plot, to be honest. Should have DNF'd this one. The main possible motive for pretty much every suspect was that they were cheating on someone with someone else. The whole town is sleeping with each other. I feel like we could have come up with more motives than that. There are other reasons why you might kill someone. And I wish you would have thought of something else at any point in the book. Crooked Kingdom, basically the same thoughts as the first one. I also gave it 4.5 stars. I would love more from these characters, and I hope that some of them show up in the King of Scars duology. Foxglove by Adeline Grace, the second book to Belladonna. I gave it 3.5 stars. Once again, could have done with less romance. Liked the mystery plot. And that's about all I have to say about that one. Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. A Baba Yaga retelling-ish. A Baba Yaga It's about her great-grandchildren who inherit her house, Thistlefoot, and the sketchy dude that comes along with it, and that they have to basically try to escape. Good, definitely some potential trigger warnings. If you liked The Night Circus, try Thistlefoot. Very similar style of writing, I felt. Also quite lyrical and descriptive. So that's Thistlefoot, not my cup of tea necessarily, but you might like it. Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I gave this one 3 stars. It was a slow read. There were parts of it I really enjoyed. There were parts of it I really didn't like. You switch which character's point of view you are in for like significant chunks of the book. Certain characters I really enjoyed. Certain characters I really did not. And so that made it so that there were parts that were awesome and there were parts that were terrible. So it averaged out to about a 3 star. All right, we are on the home stretch here. A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This is a Tale of Two Cities retelling, making it fantasy and having to do with fae and fairies. As a big Tale of Two Cities fan, I was obviously very intrigued by this book. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It was very creative. I don't necessarily have anything specific that I didn't enjoy about it, but it just didn't quite hook me enough to be a 5 star. The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I gave this one 4 stars. This one is another fantasy that gets a little spooky, a little creepy, maybe not spooky, but a little bit on the darker side of things. I enjoyed this one. I definitely want to read the rest of the story. I feel like there was a part of it, the pacing had some issues. There was parts that felt really long and there were parts that felt like they were just breezed through so fast. I'm hoping the second book maybe helps moderate some of those. So we'll be continuing this duology for sure. And then my final Around the World in Books video for the year started off with Becca Lamb by Z Eggo. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's a fun little like coming of age story. There are definitely some heavy topics. Prepare for trigger warnings. But overall it was a fun, easy read. Unica Looking at the Sea by Fernando Contreras Castro. This is about a woman and her experience of living in a dump in Costa Rica. Fictional, but I'm sure based off of real events. It was alright. It's a little bit of a downer of a book for sure. It's very much so about how people can adapt to living in terrible circumstances, and there's not so much of there's not really an element of hope to it. Very realistic, very draws you in and makes you think kind of a book. 3.5 stars as well on that one. And then I took a break. Well, I was slowly working through the last book for that video. I picked up Wisteria by Adeline Grace, final book in the Belladonna series. I gave this one 3.5, probably my least favorite of the series. There was no murder mystery to save it. Also, Signet and Death basically completely absent until 75% of the book, which are like the main characters from the first 2 books. So that was a little odd. I didn't love the 2 characters that I focused on enough to warrant not having the other 2 characters in there. Also, they like proposed a mystery. It got set up and then we just never got a solution for it really. So I still have lots of questions and I don't think there's supposed to be another book. I'm confused. Uncontent with it is probably the best way to say where I'm at. And then I read Raelia by Linda Noni, the second book in the Medoran Chronicles. This is what I want. I'm loving this series. I have the 3rd book on my docket to read very soon. Exactly what I want from a YA fantasy. Please give me more recommendations that feel like this, because this is what I want. City of Glass, Cassandra Clare. This is not what I want in a YA fantasy. This is 90% just teenage drama and relationship weirdness. And maybe 10% plot. The 10% of plot, interesting. There were some new characters introduced that I am curious about. I will be pausing on The Mortal Instruments for right now to go read one of the other series. Not sure which one it is. And then I will be coming back to the rest of these. This feels like the end of a trilogy. It truly does. So I will be treating it like a trilogy. And I gave that one 3 stars. Don't know if I said that. Ender's Shadow by Orson Scott Card. This is the start of the second series in the Ender's verse. I've read the whole Ender's Game quartet a while ago. Really enjoyed it. This one basically matches timelines with Ender's Game. There's a lot of overlap between this and Ender's Game, except you're following it from the point of view of Bean, who is one of the other characters that you meet in Ender's Game. He's kind of like a small character in that one. He's the main character in this book. Setting up a series that is eventually going to fill in the gap of the time jump between book 1 and 2 in the Ender's Game quartet, which I'm very excited about. I like Bean as a main character. He's a fun little guy. Definitely very hard to imagine him as a small child in most of this book, but I had the same issue with Ender's Game. Not the biggest fan of like the Battle School storyline. I feel like it's fine. It's a little slow for my taste. 4 stars. Then my Christmas book this year was Murder for Christmas by Frances Duncan. This one is technically the 4th book in a series of a detective called Mordecai Tremaine. I decided that it was probably like Poirot and I could read them in a new order, and that seems to be true. I think it's fine. There's references to previous cases, but like nothing that you need to know. And he's not officially a detective. He is like an amateur who's just really good at this kind of stuff. This one was fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't see the twist, so that was good. I gave it 4 stars. Great if you were looking for a Christmas murder mystery. Very niche, I'm aware. And then the final book that I finished this year was The Beast by Oscar Martinez. This is a nonfiction book by an investigative journalist who went down and rode the rails and just in general spent a couple years in Mexico documenting the migrant trail. Very fascinating read, for sure. There's pictures, very well documented, very well written, definitely heavy. Not something that I wanted to read all in one sitting, so I worked on this for most of December and just finished it pretty recently. Very good. Would recommend if you are at all, honestly, even if you're not interested in this topic. Would recommend everybody read this at some point. I feel like this could go on like a required reading. Something everybody should be more aware of, especially if you live in the US. 5 stars. Really liked it. I want more books by investigative journalists. Like, please, somebody who has spent tons of time out on the front lines learning about something, but also has lots of experience writing. Send me more recs of books by investigative journalists. One honorable mention really quickly. My current read is Harry Potter. I am about halfway through, maybe slightly further. I don't know if I'll finish it today, but this will be the first book that I finish in 2026. I'm enjoying it. This is my first time reading Harry Potter. I've never read it before, so I'm having a good time. But this is my current read. So that is everything that I read in 2025, not including DNFs. There were lots of books that I started and didn't finish this year. I was a little bit more willing to DNF things, but I don't document DNFs anywhere, so couldn't really tell you all the books that I DNF'd, honestly. If that's something you're interested in, let me know and maybe I'll document that next year and let you know the books that I DNF. Please advise. My voice is dying. My back is hurting from sitting on the floor this whole time. I am going to go ahead and leave you here. Let me know what else you would like to see from me, if there's any other videos that you'd like to see along the topics of recapping my reading from last year. I will have a 2026 TBR coming very soon. That will probably be up after this video. I have recorded it already, but it is ready to go, and I'm ready for another year of reading. We'll see how much I get through in 2026, but thank you very much for watching this very long video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.